I'm Veronique.
And I'm Sylvia,
Welcome to the High Vibes and a Mic podcast.
where multicultural moms connect.
Hi everyone, this is Veronique and Sylvia. Welcome back to the show. This is High Vibes and a Mic on a Monday. Today we have a guest. She's a friend, close friends of Sylvia. And we really wanted to talk to her because she has an unbelievable story. Her name is Nanci Reed. She's a heart-guided clarity and alignment mentor. She's an author, a speaker, spiritual teacher, and a Pilates instructor. So Nanci has been a student and teacher of A Course in Miracles for 2 decades, and she supports intentional, spiritually guided women to embrace their infinite worthiness and discover their real life purpose without pain or comparisons, using judgment-free decision-making. So in this interview, Nanci is going to talk to us about our purpose in life, and you won't believe the end of our conversation. I really insist on you listening until the end because she has an unbelievable story about how she met her husband. I couldn't believe it. She also facilitated the transformations of over 1,000 clients worldwide, and her award-winning book, Happily Ever Now, has captivated heart-guided readers from every walk of life. So without further ado, let's talk to Nanci.
I'm here today with a special guest, Nanci Reed, who is also a friend of mine. Hi, Nanci, how are you?
Hi, Sylvia. So lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, very excited. I'm also here with Veronique, and we are going to ask some questions to Nanci about her book and her spiritual work and Pilates and everything related to those three things. And the first question I have for you is, what led you to become a mentor and a spiritual teacher?
Well, I mean, how much time do we have? That's going to be a long story, but I'll do my best to give you the cliff note or summary version of this. So I was definitely reluctant to wear those names of mentor, spiritual teacher, all of that. I definitely held back. I got really good at hiding in plain sight with others. I've always been highly intuitive, highly empathic. I knew things that nobody had to teach me that I didn't read in a book. And yet I also had this little desire, so to speak, to be normal and to blend in and be just like everybody else. And so there was that real inner conflict about, well, so how do I be me in a world that doesn't seem to really know what that is? And there aren't a lot of me's, especially in childhood, around, right? So like I said, I took that same ability to be highly intuitive and highly empathic, and I got to learn how to become different versions of me depending on the person that I was with. And so if they wanted me to like a certain sport, yep, I was a fan of that sport. Especially like in romantic relationships, I'm thinking about specifically with this, right? So as soon as I started wanting men to pay attention to me and to want to have me as their girlfriend, I became really good at just being that girl that was like, oh, so you like scrambled eggs? Yes, me too. Absolutely. Even if I didn't, right? And so that is kind of like the underlying foundation for everything, right? And so I got through life okay. I learned how to adapt. I learned how to be the version of me that I thought others wanted to like me. And the other thing that was underlying all of that, of course, which I only realized in hindsight, because that's only when we can find true purpose, is that there was this part of me that was coming from this place of wanting to be perfect. And that I had this mistaken belief that if I gave away the power of my decision making to someone or something outside of me, it meant that I was off the hook for the outcome, if heaven forbid it wasn't perfect, right? And of course, that's not true because being in indecision is a choice, but I didn't really realize that. And so I can have a lot of compassion and a lot of grace towards that other version of me because she was doing the best she could. But with time, I became more and more disquieted by the fact that there was this inner conflict between who and what I really am and the version that I was living out in the world, even though that was the one that really only people knew. Nobody really knew this other part of me. And so with time, as I was trying to be this other version, I met this guy and we went on this date. And basically, we ended up having this really serious car accident, which brought me to my first of many near death experiences. And I had this
Wow.
totally different perspective shift and awakening from that, that maybe that intuitive voice within me, maybe actually I should start paying attention to her because she's the one that said, don't get in the car with him. And I was like, but he's really cute. What are you talking about? Like, I'm going to say yes. And so I realized in hindsight, once again, that I knew not to go and I didn't listen because I wanted to have what everybody else was having. Right. And so this led to me having some very long-term sort of like PTSD from the accident where I had physical and also emotional and even spiritual pain that I was dealing with, and I was having these recurring nightmares. And in one of the nightmares, because they would always be the same situation of the accident, but the driver's face would always change. And one night the face changed to my own. And that's when I recognized that even though I had technically been the passenger, I did have that awareness to not get in and I didn't listen and I denied that. And so I began to journal. And journaling is what really allowed me to process all of these knowings that I've always been connected to in a way that I could actually see and that was tangible. And I noticed as I was doing this that the pain lessened and I was able to just experience life from a different place. I wasn't feeling this disconnection as much. And so, to make a very long story short, I shared those writings with my mother, who had also been a longtime student and teacher of the spiritual thought system called the Course in Miracles. Now, it had always been around me, but I hadn't really had any interest in it because seemed like something that she did and that I wasn't supposed to be a part of. It was more like it was like for adults, or that there was something else that she was doing. And I was just doing the best I could, once again, to not draw attention to myself. And the last thing I ever saw myself as was spiritual, because that was a label that I wasn't comfortable being. But so, anyways, through this, she introduced my writings to a friend of hers who was a colleague with the original teacher of A Course in Miracles, Dr. Kenneth Wapnick, who went on to become my mentor. And so through connecting to him and having his timeless kindness be an example to me of being able to be in this world, but not of it, and having that awareness to be fully present while operating from a different knowing, I was able to really come into alignment and integrate with who and what I really am. And so that led me to A Course in Miracles through a bunch of serendipitous events. And fast forward to all these years later and many other experiences, I am finally comfortable, particularly after writing my own book, Happily Ever Now, Not After Everything Else is Perfect, to identify myself as not only this heart-guided clarity, alignment mentor, but also a spiritual teacher.
What a journey. And it's so funny that you're talking about this car accident and the grief and everything that comes with it. Because we interviewed someone that is this episode is going to be released very soon as well. That is about grief and how to manage grief, and that it can be, you can feel grief from very different ways, right? Like it can be like a car accident where you got injured, or it can be something that you lost, like someone that a broken relationship. So, and she was telling us about exactly that process of trying to understand herself and to understand what she was feeling, because she had that same thing of like the body injury that lasts for a long time, and also the mental injuries that comes with that. So that
Mm-hmm.
for you, that was like the what made the changes for you to become more like to change the course of your life, or was there any other big event that happened that also kind of like increased your spirituality or your
Well,
need to be more connected?
I would say that from the moment that I began journaling for after the car accident, everything shifted for me, because what I didn't share was while I was going over the edge of this cliff that we went off in this car accident, so even more drama, I had this moment that they
Yeah.
call a life review in near death experiences, where I was shown my life until that point. But what was really interesting were the only things I was shown were moments in a dynamic of me and another person. So, in a relationship where there had either been intentional or unintentional unkindness or like resentment between me and them. And that's all I saw. So, like misunderstandings, miscommunications, places where I had said that I liked scrambled eggs when I really liked another version, or, something like that. Right. And I was like, why am I being shown this? Like, this is the last thing I'm going to see before I die. Like, what is this? And so through writing and journaling and allowing myself to process as a form of self-healing, and then being connected to my mentor, Ken, who really helped me to process my dreams that have always been very, very, very lucid in nature, as well as look at the writings themselves. I was able to come into a much more comfortable place with being able to actually introduce myself to people and say, "Hi, I'm Nanci. I am intuitive. Hi, I am empathic. Hi, I work with you within these types of modalities." And in the beginning, Pilates, which is something that I offer, is that I did it as a form of healing from my own injuries from the car accident. And I had all these injuries with my shoulder and my thoracic spine and everything like that, and nothing else seemed to really work. But what was so interesting was, even though I was just learning Pilates for the very first time, and by no means am I the best, like, you know, practitioner at it as far as being able to do these crazy moves or like having a ballerina background or anything like that, but I am one of the best teachers of it, in the fact that I can look at anybody in front of me. And I've worked with over 1,000 individual clients around the world since I began teaching. And I can see where there are misalignments, either energetically and also physically, emotionally, spiritually, but I only do it by invitation. So if the client is there and they're purely wanting a physical experience, that's what they're going to get, right? Even if I'm operating from something different, I'm not going to take them down a realm or a path that they're not either looking for or comfortable for. But I might sprinkle in little insights here and there, and then if that stirs their curiosity, then we can do that. But a lot of people end up finding me through my work in A Course in Miracles. And then they realize that I also offer Pilates and that I offer this mentorship that is very, very, very customized. And so what ends up happening is that all of these abilities and awarenesses that I had, even from childhood, I've now got different letters after my name to back them up, right? So it's like I've got my master's in organizational psychology, and I've got a certification in spiritual life coaching and regular life coaching. And I've been studying and teaching A Course in Miracles for almost 2 decades. And I've worked with all these different clients. So, as far as having like a spiritual awakening, it wasn't just a singular linear occurrence. It's been much more holographic. And it's been much more about just knowing that I trust my intuition now, first and foremost. And then I look at what the world says, right? So it's like I don't deny anything that the world seems to present or any information that's out there, but I'm operating from an internal alignment with sort of a different teacher as I walk through any of my experiences. And then what I've come to know is that that inner teacher actually isn't separate from me, that it's really that sort of quantum elder version of me, like I like to say, that has already experienced all of this, and yet she's also integrated with me right now as though everything is brand new at the same time.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to the accident when you were talking, when you were saying that you knew you shouldn't have, gone into the car. Was it your intuition, or the guy didn't look? Was he drunk,
No,
or
it was my intuition.
your
I
intuition?
actually heard very clearly, "Don't go,"
Oh,
when
a
I got
voice.
invited to go. And then I was like,
Oh.
"No, he's so cute. Look at this car. Like, this is going to be great. What are you talking about?" And
Oh.
again, just wanting to deny that part of me, because if I acknowledge that, then it was sort of like that, oh, I'm not like anybody else, right? There was that part that was like, I didn't get at that point, that I then would learn from watching the demonstration of my mentor, that I said that it is possible to be here, but not be operating of here. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that I didn't know that at that time. I thought that I had to choose. I thought that I either had to choose to be fully in the world and operating all together, or that I was going to be spiritual and literally float away, because it was so easy for me to not want to be here. There was this ambivalence that I had about being here versus feeling so overwhelmed by everyone else's emotions, by everyone else's feelings, and just asking my mother, even at a very young age, way earlier than probably children should have the awareness, I'd be like, "Mom, could you just put me back inside? I'm not supposed to be here. Like, this isn't, I don't feel at home here." And she'd be like, "You're like 3? What are you doing?" Like, you know, and yet I was always a very quote unquote old soul. I would have people come and tell me their life stories all through, even though I was doing my best to hide in plain sight. If anybody had any sort of inkling of energy, they were drawn to me. And it used to overwhelm me. It used to frighten me. I used to be really uncomfortable with that, because I would feel either like exposed, and they were going to say like, "Oh, look, this is the weird person here. And, she's got this aura, or she's got like all," and I just wanted to be me. Or I would feel responsible then as a result of holding that space with them. Like, well, what am I supposed to do then? Like, you've told me your life story. I'm probably never going to see you again, but what am I supposed to do with this information now that I know all of this? And I would literally wear these huge headphones when I was in college to go work in like a coffee shop, because I thought that would keep people from talking to me.
Wow.
And it didn't work. They would still come over, and I remember this one woman came over and she literally tapped me, and then she lifted my headphone, and I was like, "Ah," you know? So it always makes me giggle, because there are certain people, I see them online, and I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about, that like they want to be known for
Yes.
being this spiritual whatever, and that they're a guru, or well, I did not. Like, I had no interest. It was only in the last few years that I finally even added spiritual to anything that was identified with me. I never spoke about A Course in Miracles publicly until COVID happened, and then everyone was locked down. And then people realized, with all of my teaching on the audio app called Clubhouse, that I did have a lot of knowledge with it, that I did have the history with my mentor. I never drew attention to that. So like I said, I'm the reluctant spiritual teacher, because I was not looking for that label, and I was not looking for anyone to think that I had something that they didn't have. And I don't. I mean, I really don't see it that way. I see it as that if I am more vulnerable about my story and about what's possible for me, then hopefully somebody else that's also wanting to hide in plain sight, that they'll realize, oh, it's safe. I can be seen.
Yeah.
It is safe.
So for the one who are listening and who don't know, what is A Course in Miracle? Is it something they can do online, or is it like a school where you can
No,
go?
so A Course in Miracles is a very comprehensive spiritual psychology system. Okay. And it is not just like a single book that you, even though there is one for it, that you can like read cover to cover and you're like, "Oh, I'm good. I'm done." It's really about, it's a lifetime decision if it's something that speaks to you. It's not about proselytizing. You're not trying to get more people to study it. It's a self-study curriculum. You can do it in a group setting, but you can also just do it on your own. And it really is about returning to the memory of the oneness that we all are. And it's about undoing the belief system that is founded in a separation idea taken seriously. And that is also founded in hierarchies and differences. And so it's really about not looking on the level of the body, but looking on the level of the mind and not the brain, right? So it's being connected to something that is non-specific, that is more abstract, and realizing that ultimately that's sourced from our creator, whatever you want to call that, and that it comes from a decision in that mind of that creator for love, and that's what we all are. So that's how nothing is apart from us, everything is a part of us, and that there is no linear time, even though we experience it that way. So, not really run-of-the-mill ideas to be shooting around in coffee houses, but it is something that has always spoken to me since I decided to explore it with my curiosity. And it has been so helpful and transformative. And no, I don't talk about it to everybody on, a mountaintop, basically, but I live it and I am it, as far as my decision making, as far as my relationships, as far as how I approach forgiveness, as far as how I bring everything into a lens of gentleness, not judgment, including when I want to be judgmental. That's what's really been the biggest healing for me, is to look at my decision for being judgmental without judgment, and also bringing that gentleness into it. And then if I can do that with myself, then I can extend that into all of my relationships. And I can also demonstrate for others in a way that doesn't have to call attention to what the system is, because it's not the only way to enlightenment or the only way to salvation. It's just a way. And if it's a way that is helpful and it's a way that is meaningful, then I'm somebody you can have a conversation with about it. And if not, there's thousands of other paths out there.
Okay, yeah, I had no idea about that. So, yeah, that's good to know. And I like the fact that you're saying you're not showing that to people, through it. And if they want to know, they can ask you.
Yeah.
If they want to know, they will find a way to know about it. That's good. Is
Yes.
it part of because I saw that you talk about the sacred embodiment practice. Is that part of this?
No,
Or is that
not too
something
much
else?
actually. Yeah, that's more like aligned with the body work and with the Pilates
The
and the
Pilates.
mindfulness and meditation and everything like that. Of course, the miracles wouldn't really be aligned with that as much. It would be more that you look at your body with a different purpose. So, like that, instead of having your body have the purpose of reminding you of being separate from everyone and everything, you could look at your body as a classroom that is helping you to be a vehicle for remembering the oneness that you actually are between you and everything.
Okay, so the sacred embodiment practices are more like in the Pilates
Yes, it's more in
classes.
Pilates, and people that want to work with like aligned breath work and mindfulness and things like that, and attention setting with their bodies. Then, because I don't just teach Pilates. When somebody works with me privately, what we do is we have them choose an intention, and then we do movement, so that it's always grounded in that intentional awareness rather than just sort of like mindless, random things.
It's so funny because I never heard about somebody who does Pilates like you, like a teacher, with all the
Probably not.
spiritual, with all the
Like I
spiritual
said,
attached behind.
yes, yes, and
This is
that's
the
just
first
it.
time I hear that.
Is it like when I lived in LA and I had my studios there and everything like that, on the surface, nobody had any idea about this, right? That
Yeah.
work with me. But what was really interesting was, because there I only was word of mouth. I didn't really do any advertising, hardly at all. And so when people would work with me, it would be very quickly apparent to them that what we were doing was so much bigger than just Pilates. That there was always this other element that I was bringing in, only by invitation, of course, and that if they wanted to, that it was much more than just about getting the Pilates body, quote unquote. It was more about being in alignment with the truth of them, and then having their body be a reflection of that decision.
So you get more for what you register for.
Yes.
And can you tell us, maybe you're already, I'm not sure if that's what you talk about, that's it, but can you tell us what perfectly and perfect sustainable happiness means to you?
Yes. So the thing is that there's a lot of systems out there that talk about, oh, this is the way to happiness, right? But
Hmm.
what ends up happening is that we, as people in general, with even the best intentions, when we start to strive for something that we believe is outside of us, then when it doesn't show up in the way that it's supposed to or in the timing that it's supposed to, we judge ourselves as failing in somehow or falling short, right? But when you approach your sustainable happiness from a lens of being your perfectly imperfect self and having that perfectly imperfect experience, now you can never fail because you're always either having a lesson or a blessing. And you're not denying anything, but you're seeing the purpose in it. And so you're asking yourself, okay, so is this experience, is this giving me the purpose of reinforcing what's true for me? Or is this a lesson in me denying what's true for me? And can I look at that with gentleness and not judgment? And therefore, when you become the source of your own sustainable happiness and a thing that I like to call gentle agency, what is then possible is that you can always access it. So when you take perfection off the table, then everything else is available to you to access and accept if you only believe you are worthy to receive it.
Yeah, that's a big discussion between Sylvia and I. We always have those kind of topic, to be able to receive what what the universe, God, is sending you, and being able to accept it and feeling that you're worthy of it. It's really
Yes,
important.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah. And
I
not
like
waiting
that.
for the perfect moment to act or
Yeah.
to do something, right? Because if you're just waiting for perfection. So what did you consider being one of the most negative things of perfectionism, that a lot of people think it's a good thing, but we know it's not? So
That's that's so true. And so the thing about perfectionism is it's usually a mask for either procrastination
good
or
point.
for fear in some way, right? There's also imposter syndrome underneath it a lot of times. So like, who am I to do this? Do I have enough letters after my name? Do I have enough followers after me? Do I have enough dollars in my bank account? Whatever it is, there's always this idea and a mindset of waiting for something external to give us permission. So the shift in going from seeking perfection that's never arriving versus embracing being your perfectly imperfect self is that the permission is granted internally. And therefore, since nothing is giving it to you, nothing can take it away from you. So it's always your sovereign and gentle agency to make those choices and the decisions.
Okay, yeah. And by the way, when you're talking about gentleness, just we wanted to hear more about the like inviting more gentleness, and most importantly, less judgment, because I think that is a very, to be honest, very hard one. Not to judge absolutely anything or anybody.
Uh,
Um, it's almost like impossible. So, what do you think about that? Can you
Impossible.
tell us more?
I was going to say, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's just it. If you try to make it be perfect, right, then it is
Oh
impossible because
yeah,
you'll
yeah.
never be perfectly non-judgmental, right? So if it's perfectly
Hmm.
imperfect, then it's always possible, right? And the thing with what I'm really saying is to take a lighter heart as you're looking at things. Now, that doesn't mean denying anything. It doesn't mean bypassing anything. It doesn't mean like you stub your toe and you're like, oh, I'm so happy. There's a purpose to this. No, you, it's more about now you look at how do you respond to stubbing your toe, right? But can you look at it without judgment? If you can, then that is bringing that gentleness into it. Now, here's the thing, if you look at how you feel about stubbing your toe and you're judging it, but you don't judge your judgment, then you're actually practicing gentleness with yourself. And so you can always choose gentleness. You can always choose a mindset led by curiosity rather than comparison, shame, blame, any sort of preconceived judgments, anything where you're only relying on a specific outcome in order to feel an inner sense of peace, right? So being able to bring more gentleness into your life is really asking to be more present. It's really asking to be more aware of your choices. So, no, you can't control what seems to happen, even if we try, but you always have sole control over your interpretation of it. And you get to choose, do I want to interpret this with a lens of judgment, or do I want to interpret it with a lens of gentleness and compassion?
I love it, especially the curiosity part, because it makes it so much more lighthearted and less pressure when you're looking at something without the judgment eyes, but with the curiosity, like, why is this happening, or could that be in another way? Just like asking open questions like that, it takes off the weight. I think it makes it way less heavy on you, less like the tension is gone. So yeah, very good.
Exactly. There's that lightness, right? You're going into a wondering state. So you're wondering what the purpose of that is. You're wondering what's that wanting to serve, right? Versus like going like, well, why am I doing this? And da 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 da. And there's no defensiveness needed because you're not attacking yourself.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
sometimes we are very quick also on judging ourselves or judging even other people. So, so you mentioned your book, Happily Ever Now. And earlier also you mentioned that you were attracting people even if you didn't want to. So, I mean, the attention because you're empathic. So, Happily Ever Now, is that the result of your journaling?
Well, yes, in an
Yeah.
indirect way, right? So,
Okay.
so happily ever now is actually the fulfillment of a lifelong dream to write a book, and yet also at the same time, my own journey with gently overcoming perfectionism
Okay.
and looking at how that has really been the foundation of all of my choices. And then it also brings into it testimonials of clients that I've worked with and in different modalities. And then it also has a 1 week sort of mindset primer to being able to experience the 12-week program that I usually do in a group setting, but I decided to include it here in its entirety in the book because I didn't want perfectionists that are saying yes to this book to have yet one more thing that they need to fulfill in order to receive that wisdom and that, knowledge. And so that's why I included it in the book. And I'm hoping that it'll be something that lives with you so that you can revisit it. Like I was saying about The Artist's Way, it's sort of similar to that. It's not just a cover to cover sort of experience. It's like, oh, I can save this. And then I can go back and I can experience this over again, depending on where I'm at in my life. And you might have a totally different awareness that comes up for you. And you can just keep meeting yourself where you are without judgment. So you're not going to war with that part of you that chooses perfectionism. You're actually allowing it to be as it is, but without judgment. So you're not making it be bigger than it actually really is. And you're not denying it in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, definitely. Don't deny yourself. You're gonna keep that
Yes, that's
bundle
important.
inside, and one day it's just gonna to explode. Yeah. So, do you think you're better now at having boundaries? Or not taking other people's energy?
Better, not
You're better at
perfect,
that. Not
but
not
I'm
perfect. Yeah.
but I'm perfectly imperfect at it. Yeah, there's still certain I would say like energetic signatures that tend to trigger me wanting to like
Yeah.
like or even being a mother of a very highly empathic daughter as well. And then me being a super empath, like it was very challenging for me even after all the work I've done to not want to just run away from her when she had her tantrums or something like that because it was so consuming and overwhelming to me. And I really had to be very gentle with myself and work with that. Okay, I can allow her to have her experience without me trying to fix it, without me trying to manage it, and also not taking it on as my own. Now it's easier to say than to do, right? So I've had to be very, very, very gentle and very forgiving. And there's been times now that she's older that I can say, Mommy just needs a moment. And like, I will just take a deep breath and either open the door so that I have some fresh air or just take a few pauses and know that I'm worthy to do that and be vulnerable with her and say that and say, this is a lot. I'm really doing my best right now, but I'm feeling very overwhelmed. And I can say that and she'll know what that means. And I tell her like has nothing to do with you. You keep doing your experience, whatever it is. And if you want to cry right now, cry, cry, cry. But mommy's just going to go over here for a second and then I'm going to come back. Right. And you're going to get a better mom by doing that. And so she sees that and she'll even sometimes be like, Mom, do you need a moment? And like,
Yes.
and she does it with like the biggest heart and everything like that. So there definitely are certain classrooms that are still more challenging for me and personality types and, things like that. But again, when my intention is imperfection, I can never fail.
Yeah. Okay, that's a very good say. I'm going to remember this. That's going to help me, for the future. So my last question for you is something I saw on your website and I thought it was really funny and I don't know what this means. So you have a quote inspired by the adventure of Alice in Wonderland. So what is this exactly?
Well, so no, I did a program actually recently here called Your Wondrous Adventures with Sustainable Happiness. And, it's like there's so many different programs out there, right? I mean, you guys see them advertised all the time that are supposed to transform your life and da 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 da. And some of them are just kind of flat and boring. Let's just be honest, right? Like, it's like, okay, so yet another, like, superlative word or something like that for the title. So I was like, I'm going to have fun with this for me. Like, this is purely just for me, is that rather than just having it be a online class yet again that everyone sees advertised, I'm going to make it be an Alice in Wonderland themed one. So I'm going to choose topics and titles that are going to align with the subject matter, and yet they're going to come from directly the literature that speaks to my heart so much and has been such a pivotal, actually, like framework for a lot of my work. And so that is where that came from. And so like a lot of times when I've always loved, I'm not sure if Sylvia knows this about me or not, but I've always loved planning parties, like even as a little girl. And I always would have themes. That was so important to me.
I love
And
that.
so if I'm going to have a party, which is what I see an online class as, and a group thing, I wanted to have a theme and I want to have costumes and I want to be fun and play and everything because life is serious enough. And I'm talking about bringing a light heart, right? So let's have fun. And transformation doesn't have to be painful to be powerful. That's what I say in my book. And I totally mean that. And so why not bring the whimsy? Why not bring the freedom? Why not bring the imagination into it? Maybe that will actually help us to lower our defenses a little bit and be able to really meet with curiosity the awarenesses that we're having rather than have to feel so rigid and academic.
Yeah, I mean, if you mix curiosity plus fun, people are going to sign up for sure. Because like you said, a lot of those classes and courses are very boring after a while.
Yes.
And you don't want to continue. Yeah. You need to be...
You don't want to be like you're back at school or something, with assignments and like long
Exactly.
texts that you have to write. It's just everything is so like we already live through this all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been
Making
there, done that.
fun
No, thank you.
is awesome.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. Definitely. Well, that's it for me. Sylvia, do you have a follow-up question or do you want to add something else?
No, I think this is it for me as well. Yeah, it was so inspiring. And I love like how lighthearted you are and so like you just transmit this energy of being super like gentle and not taking like that harsh approach to things or like just a picture of like writing an assignment that is very boring and something that is fun and light. I can see you like with the other one, right? Like something that is, because life is so short to be led in a stressful and pressure way. Like everybody just wants to do, and show up, like make look busy to everyone else all the time. Like, oh, I'm busy, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. There is no need for that. You can, take a break when needed. So I like the way you approach things, and I love your teaching. So very good, very nice.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah, you look really relaxed and very zen.
I spent a lifetime being stressed
I
and
know.
like intention and oh my God, trying to be
Hiding.
perfect, hiding in plain sight. It took a lot of work.
I know.
And now that I'm just out there, I mean, there's no effort in being perfectly imperfect. It's like it's
Do you have
awesome.
something maybe you want to add that we didn't talk about? Maybe like a little message to our listeners?
Let's see. Well, I mean, if people want to reach out to me, obviously,
Yes.
you can see
Oh.
I'm very approachable. So
I would love. I forgot
come say
to ask
hi.
you about how you met your husband.
Oh, is there a story there?
Well, let's see. So I met him originally at a wedding, and he thought that I was the date of my stepbrother, who was there at the wedding with me. Because my brother, this is all the convoluted stories, but my brother was the best man in this wedding, and my now husband was a groomsman. So in the same, groomsmen group. And my stepbrother was at the wedding too, because he knew the groom as well. And so I was just with him. And so my now husband thought that I was my stepbrother's date. So once my brother clarified that no, I was not his date, that I was his little sister. And so then my husband and I ended up having this amazing conversation and connection. And years later, after many back and forths with each other, because I was still in college and everything like that, he'd already graduated, we got married. And then about almost 4 years after that, we got divorced.
Oh.
And yeah,
I wasn't
surprise.
expecting that. Okay, like
Yes,
okay.
surprise. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
And one of the main things that was behind that was the fact that I was told at that time that I was not able to be a mother biologically, that I had some weird anatomy stuff going on. And, basically, I just didn't really know who I was if I wasn't going to be a mom in this relationship. And it wasn't necessarily that he put all this pressure on me, but it was sort of like, well, why are we together? Like, what is the purpose of us being together? And it was also, I believe now, looking in hindsight, that I was still in that really inner conflict place about that I wasn't really being me. I was still being these other versions of me. So I was being the girl who, liked all these things according to him, because I told him that. And yet they really weren't my favorite things. And so every once in a while I would share with him just a little bit about me. And he would kind of look at me a little strange. And I was like, oh no, I can't share anymore. So there was this very weird dynamic between the two of us. And yet there was also this undeniable like chemistry between us. And it was as though we had known each other for years, even though we had just met, at that time. And so I got divorced. I started over brand new, went to Los Angeles, City of Angels, made my way there as far as having my own business and made all these other connections. Of course, I was dating other people and he was too and everything. And yet we always kept having these situations where we would like bump into each other. And it didn't make sense because I was in LA and he was up here. And so this whole time I am working on myself. I am building my business. I am going and working with my spiritual mentor, Ken Wapnick, down for A Course in Miracles. His foundation was in Temecula, which wasn't too far from Los Angeles. So I was seeing him quite a bit and going to all of his classes that I could. And I was, going out in LA and living the life and doing parties and all these other things. And yet I was also working 7 days a week in my business. And so I was very, very committed to that. And I was trying to find somebody else to date. And then a few years into that journey of unsuccessfully finding anyone, I decided to just give up dating and be in a relationship with me. And so I was intentionally single for 1 year. Now, prior to that, 1 year before, I had bumped into my then ex-husband with my then current boyfriend while we were up in the Bay Area visiting family in a place that made no sense for either one of us to be. And we saw each other. And when I saw my ex, I was like, oh, wow, I don't feel anything but love for this person. There was no more resentment. There was no more anger. There was no more anything that had been there when we last saw each other before that point. And so I remember I was with my boyfriend at the time. And then here I am staring at my ex-husband who's wearing the hat that I had given him a few months into us first dating all those years prior, that apparently had been broken. And he recently found it and fixed it because it was his favorite hat. So he's wearing this hat. I'm looking at him. We're having this conversation. My then boyfriend walks in and he's like, hey, what's going on? I'm like, oh, hi, this is my ex-husband. And we just happen to both be here, and it makes no sense. And we have this conversation. And as I'm looking over at my then boyfriend, I hear very clearly that same inner voice that had always been there with me. And she says, he is not your future, about the boyfriend. And then I look over at my ex-husband that now I have all this just love for. And it says, and he's not only in your past. And I was like, what? Like, I don't even know what to do with this. And so then fast forward, break up with that boyfriend a few months later, be intentionally single, come back up to the Bay Area to visit family. And I walk into this restaurant and there's my ex-husband. And I'm like, okay, this is really weird. And he tells me that basically he's on the verge of breaking up with the girl that he was with. I tell him that I've been single for, X number of months at this point. And I tell him I'm going back to LA because I'm working on my book at that point that I'd started 1,000 times and never finished. And that I was still teaching my clients and everything like that. So I tell him that I'm going down to LA and then I'm not coming back up to the Bay Area until probably the holidays or something like that. And he's like, oh, okay. And we just had this like really beautiful exchange with each other. We ended up having lunch together and we went our separate ways. And I had this dream about him where he was looking for me and he couldn't find me. And then in the dream, I woke up saying aloud, I'm here, like for him to know. And then I come to find out a few weeks later, after we ended up connecting again, that he'd had a dream at a very similar time frame, called out my name to the girl that was not very happy to hear this, that he was with at the time. And anyways, so what happened was that when I came back up for the holidays, it was also near his birthday. And so I sent him a text and I said, hey, happy birthday. Hope you're enjoying it, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, oh, hey, you remembered. And I'm like, yeah, of course, we were married. What are you talking about? And so then I'm like, just trusting that intuition, remembering that dream. I tell him, hey, let me take you out for coffee to celebrate your birthday next time I'm in the Bay Area. And to my surprise, he says, yes. And I was like, okay, great. So I thought, well, maybe what I heard, that message about him not being my past, was that maybe we were just going to be friends. Maybe there was this like cosmic healing between us, and that our friendship was the thing that always stood, even after all the times that we would break up and get back together again and everything else before we got married. And so I thought that's what was going to be there. So I was really excited actually about having my friend back, who I realized how much I loved my friend and our friendship. And so we started off as friends, meeting up here and there and having coffee and doing all these other things. And then lo and behold, a few months later, became more than friends. And he had gotten rid of that other relationship that he was in. I was completely single. I ended up getting this job offer that had me relocate to the Bay Area for this contract position. And a few months later, I find myself pregnant with the miracle baby.
What?
And then we decide to get remarried. And lo and behold, it's 7.5 years later, and I'm here.
This is unbelievable, that story.
I love this story.
This is not destiny. If this is not destiny, what is it? Wow.
Yes.
Between the voice, the dream, I can't believe it. Wow.
Yes. And there's so many more details to that I didn't include because they're in the book. But I mean, I could tell you more. It's just, it could not have been scripted more. Like if somebody was writing a pilot of a TV show or something like that, they couldn't have scripted what happened between he and I, because it wasn't just those opportunities. It was multiple times where I would be driving on the freeway or something and he would text me and he'd be like, This is way before we had that one interaction with each other. And he would say, "Are you on your way up to the Bay Area?" And I'd be like,
Oh.
"Yeah." Or he'd be like, "Oh, are you going up to Tahoe?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." And like, he's like, "I felt it." And he's like, "I'm going to be up there. Like, I'm already on my way. I'm already there or whatever." And I'd just be like, "This is so weird." And like, sometimes we would see each other, sometimes we wouldn't, but it just kept happening. There was like this just cosmic, I don't know, thread between us that nothing seemed to ever separate.
Does your husband think also that it's very weird and very like cosmic?
I mean,
What does he
he
think?
does, but he's not a spiritual person, although he's more embracing of intuition. Like, he relies now upon me, like in his business. I can say to him, "Oh, I don't think that person's telling you all the things they're supposed to be," or, "Oh, I'd look a little deeper into that paperwork," or whatever it is. And he does listen. He totally listens because I have 100% accuracy with him. And so he's very, very, very open to it. But if you ask him directly, he will not have a conversation with you about it. And he's like very standoffish, except for if you ask him about, does it work? Like the work that I do, he'll be the first one to say yes. And any of the body healing and everything like that too, he always comes to me and he's like, "Okay, can you just fix me? Can you just this? Can you just that?" And he'll say, so he's never stood in my way with anything. But again, it's not about me getting him to be different or need to believe anything different. We're able to hold space for each other. And he can do what he's doing. I'm doing what I'm doing. And yet, in my mind, I don't see us as any separation.
Sylvia, I have just 2 words for this: twin flame.
Yes. Yes. Very
In
much
this
so.
In the
case,
good sense.
I
Twin
can-
flames in the
in the good one.
The positive side of twin
Twin
flames, because we
flame.
are a little bit critical of
Yeah.
that. This is like pure soulmate level, so more than anything else.
So, my daughter doesn't know yet the story. We've been trying to figure out, like, that's going to obviously have to come up in conversation, but we haven't revealed that to her yet, because she is so much into families and the fairy tale and everything like that. And so we haven't brought that up yet. I know we're going to, but it's definitely not something that I necessarily lead with in conversations, but it's not something I have any shame about or any kind of, holding back about. Obviously, I wrote it in the book and anyone can read it if they want to. But I thought it was a great example to show, again, that there's always a possibility of bringing a different purpose into an experience, and that it is possible to really start over with somebody when we have a different lens that we're bringing into that situation. And so when I was willing to be all of me as me and not needing to be these different versions, he got to see the real me and he got to choose that. And then I got to make space for him to be how he is too, and to let him know that it was safe to do so. And so I feel like we're in such a healthier place in our relationship than we were the first time around, because I don't need anything from him that way. I'm not looking for his validation on anything. He knows that. And so it's just a very different dynamic. And I'm so happy that that's the dynamic my daughter sees as a relationship between, a husband and wife and mom and dad and everything else, because that is the one that I really want to demonstrate to her, to be able to see that it is possible.
And also the miracle that you became a mother.
Yes.
When you
And
were sick before,
that
it
was
wasn't
a whole other
possible.
story. I had a dream
That's
about
another
that
story.
too. A dream about that a year beforehand, and I nearly died in pregnancy several times, and
really?
almost died in my C-section. So it was not an easy journey by any means, and yet it was very aligned, and it was one of the greatest classrooms for me in my spiritual journey, for sure. And but it was a really good example of perfectly imperfect, because I had zero control over what my body decided to do with that pregnancy. It was like I was passing out. I had vertigo. Just so many hardships. And yet I just kept telling myself that if the baby's not going to say no, I'm not either. And so I just kept on doing the best I could and showed up. And I didn't even know if I was going to live to tell the tale of being her mother. But I did see the purpose in going through that experience and bringing her into this world.
Women, what do we do,
Yeah.
for our kids, giving our bodies, our mind, our life,
Yes.
our lives,
It's all worth it in the end. It's such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
So it all happens for a reason too. And yeah, makes us stronger. That's for sure.
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Feels like we have to do like a second episode on this.
I know. I'm like, oh my God, it's getting so juicier and juicier.
I know.
Love this story.
Or we just, read the book. Everything
yes,
is in there,
read
right?
the book. Read the book.
Oh,
Read
yes.
the book.
Yeah.
Read the book.
Yes. We put all the information, don't worry, in the show notes. If people want to connect with you, follow you. Are you on Instagram?
Yes,
And
I'm
do you
on
have a Facebook
Instagram.
also? Your Facebook
I'm on
account?
Facebook. I have a private Facebook community called Sparkle Circle. That is for all heart-centered women to come together and collaborate and connect in a judgment-free zone where deliberate kindness is the underlying foundation for everything.
Okay, that was great. I can't believe that you kept the juicy stories for the end. But that's
well, thank God I asked, because I told it, I'm like, wait a minute, there is a story. I'm like, yes, I need to. Because,
I never heard a story
that before,
like that.
and I wanted to hear it again, so.
Yeah. And crazy story happened to me. So believe it or not, I really like your story because I have crazy story too. Sometimes Sylvia can't believe it, but your story, to reconnect with your husband, wow,
Yeah.
That was, and all those meetings, we're not even thinking about it, and you crossing paths with each other. That's beautiful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I would say to anyone listening, just continue to keep trusting that curiosity and those little inklings, even if they don't seem to make sense to you at the moment. When you look back on them, the purpose will be revealed.
Yeah, I'm sure you just gave a lot of hope to a lot of people. Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Nanci.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming to the show. And like I said, we put everything, in the show notes. Yeah, if people want to connect with you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you for listening today. May your journey towards spiritual fulfillment never end. Until next time, keep learning, growing, and exploring. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and Pinterest.